Good morning, dear students. Let us continue the lecture of mammary gland. Before we proceed further, let me explain you these two terms. One is witch's milk, the other is colostrum. Yesterday I have explained, but I think few students have confusion in understanding these two terminologies. See, the witch's milk, it is also known as the neonatal milk. It is secreted from the breast of some newborn babies of either sex, male or female. Okay, so but this type of secretion, it is considered as the normal physiological phenomena. Okay, so it does not require any treatment or any testing. So this is witch's milk. So the reason for production of this witch's milk from the newborn babies is because of the maternal estrogen. Okay, that you should remember. So maternal estrogen, it is circulating in neonates of both sexes through the placenta. So that could be the reason of the production of witch's milk in newborn babies. Okay, then the other, we have the colostrum. The colostrum are the first milk. What did I say yesterday? That this type of milk, it is secreted in later part of the pregnancy or for a few days after delivery or the parturition. That is known as the colostrum. So human and bovine colostrums are thick, sticky and yellowish. Okay, so in humans the colostrum has high concentrations of nutrients and antibodies, but it is small in quantity. The quantity is small but has high concentrations of nutrients and antibodies. So it is high in carbohydrates, high in protein, high in antibodies and low in fat, as human newborn may find the fat difficult to digest. Okay, so the newborns have very small digestive system, and the colostrum delivers its nutrients in very concentrated low volume form. Very concentrated low volume form. Yesterday I told you that this type of milk has got a poor nutrients but contains fat globules and colostrum corpuscles. So these colostrum corpuscles, they are high in carbohydrates, high in protein, high in antibodies and low in fat. So low in nutrients, it does not mean that it doesn't have fat globules or the colostrum corpuscles. So the colostrum corpuscles are high in carbohydrates, high in protein, high in antibodies, so and low in fat. That you should remember. Okay, so this is the real difference between the witch's milk and the colostrum. But some books, they describe as the colostrum, it is poor in nutrients but contains fat globules and colostrum corpuscles. So what it means, that colostrum corpuscles, they are high in the following the contents, as you can see there, the carbohydrates, proteins and high in antibodies. Okay, hope you have understood about the witch's milk and the colostrum. Let us discuss about blood supply of mammary gland. In blood supply, we are going to discuss about the arterial supply and the venous drainage. Arterial supply of the breast. Number one, we have the lateral thoracic artery. So this is the lateral thoracic artery. It is a branch from the axillary artery. Okay, so this lateral thoracic branch of axillary artery, it provides the lateral mammary branches. Okay, so these are the branches which are known as the lateral mammary branches. They are coming from lateral thoracic artery. Lateral thoracic artery, in turn, it is a branch from the second part of the axillary artery. So these lateral mammary branches, they wind around the pectoralis major muscle and supply the lateral part of the gland. Okay, so that is about the lateral thoracic artery. Then next we have the superior thoracic artery. The superior thoracic artery arises from the first part of the axillary artery. So it supplies the upper part of the gland. Upper part of the breast is supplied by superior thoracic artery. Then number 3 we have perforating branches here. As you can see, these perforating branches, they are from the internal thoracic artery. Okay, so internal thoracic artery, it is giving branches which are known as perforating branches to the second, third, fourth intercostal spaces. So what they form? They form medial mammary branches which eventually supply the medial part of the breast. So medial part of the breast is supplied by medial mammary branches, which are in turn branches from the internal thoracic artery. Then next we have the lateral branches of second, third, fourth intercostal arteries. Second, third, fourth intercostal arteries. So they supply deep surface of the gland. So you can see here the lateral mammary branches of the posterior intercostal arteries. They supply the deep surface of the gland. Let us discuss about venous drainage of the mammary gland. The veins, they form plexus, which is known as circulus venosus beneath the areola. Okay, so the veins, they form plexus beneath the areola, which is known as circulus venosus or the circulus venosus. So from this plexus, the veins radiate to the periphery. The veins, they radiate to the periphery from this plexus, as you can see in this diagram. Okay, so they radiate to the periphery in close proximity to the skin, and eventually they drain into axillary vein, number 1, and internal thoracic vein and intercostal veins. So from this plexus, the veins, they radiate to the periphery and eventually they drain into axillary vein, internal thoracic vein and posterior intercostal vein. So through the intercostal vein and azygous vein, here you have the azygous vein, the blood may communicate via the internal vertebral venous plexus. Internal vertebral venous plexus with intracranial, sagittal and transverse sinuses. There are sinuses in the cranial cavity. You will not understand about this sinuses here because that chapter is different. So for time being, you remember that through the intercostal vein and azygous vein, the blood may communicate via the internal vertebral venous plexus with the sagittal and transverse sinuses which are present in the cranium, and they establish venous communications with the bones like clavicle, humerus and cervical vertebrae. So the breast cancer may spread to these bones by retrograde venous flow, that is backflow of the blood. Retrograde venous flow may cause the cancer, okay, to these bones. So that you should remember, the communication via the posterior intercostal vein, azygous vein, so the internal vertebral venous plexus, which in turn communicate with the transverse and sagittal sinuses in the cranial cavity. So malignancy may spread to the abdominal organs, brain, vertebrae, ribs, skull, okay. clavicle, humerus, that you should remember. So this is the significance of the venous drainage of the mammary gland. Coming to the nerve supply, the nerves are derived from anterior and the lateral cutaneous branches, anterior and lateral cutaneous branches of 4th to 6th intercostal nerves, anterior and lateral cutaneous branches of 4 to 6 intercostal nerves. So they also convey sympathetic fibers. Okay, so the somatic fibers, they supply the overlying skin, whereas the sympathetic fibers are the vasomotor, they supply the blood vessels. Okay, the secretory activity of the gland, it is due to the production of prolactin hormone. Let us discuss about lymphatic drainage of the mammary gland. The lymphatics of the mammary gland, they are of two sets. Okay, number one, those draining the parenchyma of the breast, including the areola and the nipple. That is number one. Number two, those draining the overlying skin, excluding the areola and the nipple. So let us discuss about the lymphatic drainage of the mammary gland. That is from the parenchyma of the mammary gland. So the lymph vessels, as you can see here, they form plexus in the interlobular connective tissue and the walls of the lactiferous ducts. So these lymph vessels, they join with the subareolar plexus of Sappey. Subareolar plexus of Sappey, Sappey. So that is beneath the areola, there is a plexus. So these lymphatic vessels, they join with the subareolar plexus of Sappey, which collects lymph from the areola and the nipple. Areola and the nipple. So some of the lymphatics from the deep surface of the gland, they are said to join with the plexus of minute vessels which ramify underlying deep fascia. Okay, so in healthy breast, such connections do not form the usual pathway to the regional nodes. So they only form alternate routes. So when normal channels are obstructed by the spread of cancer cells. So let me explain again. In healthy individuals or in healthy mammary gland, the connections do not form the usual pathway to the regional nodes. They only form alternate routes when normal channels are obstructed by the spread of cancer cells. Then coming to the drainage, number one, you see this diagram, about 75% of the lymphatics from the mammary gland drain into the axillary group of lymph nodes. 75% of the lymphatics from the mammary gland drain into axillary nodes. So majority of the vessels accompany lateral thoracic artery and received by the anterior or the pectoral group. So you can see here, so axillary nodes, they are received by the anterior group or the, we say, pectoral group, and few vessels following the axillary tail reach the posterior or subscapular group. It's a posterior or subscapular group, that is subscapular beneath the scapula. So efferents from these nodes, they pass to the apical group. The efferents from these nodes pass to the central group and there to the apical group. So let me explain again. about 75% of the lymphatics from the mammary gland they drain into the axillary nodes. Okay, so from the axillary nodes, eventually the lymph drains into anterior group of lymph nodes, this pectoral group, and few vessels they follow the axillary tail and drain into the subscapular group, we say, that is posterior group. So efferents from these they drain into the apical group. Now rest of the parenchyma of the gland, that is 20%. These are known as parenchymal lymphatics. So this 20% accompany the perforating branches of internal thoracic artery. These are the perforating branches of internal thoracic artery. So these 20% of the lymphatics accompany the perforating branches of internal thoracic artery, and they drain into parasternal group of lymph nodes from both medial and lateral part of the breast. So 75% into the axillary nodes and 20% into the parasternal group of lymph nodes. About 5% of the lymphatics from the lateral and the posterior parts of the gland, they follow the intercostal vessels, post-intercostal vessels, and drain into the posterior intercostal nodes. Okay, so this is about the lymphatics from the parenchyma of the breast. Next we have from the overlying skin. From the overlying skin is nothing but the integumental lymphatics, excluding this areola and the nipple. So they pass in a radiating manner and drain into following peripheral nodes. So from the outer part into the axillary nodes, as you can see, the skin, lymphatics from the skin drain into the axillary nodes, and from the upper part into the supraclavicular nodes, the supraclavicular group, and also the lower deep cervical nodes. Some vessels reach the cephalic nodes and drain into the apical group of axillary nodes. Then from the inner part, the parasternal nodes in relation to the interthoracic vessels in the upper 5 are intercostal spaces. This is about from the inner part of the breast. The cutaneous lymphatics communicate across the midline. The cutaneous lymphatics, they communicate along the midline with those of the opposite breast. The cutaneous lymphatics, they communicate across the middle line with the opposite breast. A unilateral disease of the breast becomes bilateral by this route. So remember, cutaneous lymphatics. Cutaneous means which are draining the skin. Communicate across the middle line of the opposite breast. So unilateral diseases of the breast becomes bilateral by this cutaneous lymphatics. From the lower part, the lymphatics communicate with the rectus sheath and form a subperitoneal plexus. You can see subperitoneal lymph plexus, we say. Then these vessels drain into subdiaphragmatic nodes. Here you have the diaphragm. So these nodes, they drain into subdiaphragmatic nodes. Subperitoneal lymph plexus eventually drain into subdiaphragmatic nodes, and some pass through the falciform ligament to reach the hepatic nodes. Okay. So enlargement of these nodes by metastatic spread may produce the obstructive jaundice. Okay, enlargement of the subperitoneal lymph nodes or the diaphragmatic lymph nodes or the hepatic nodes leads to metastatic spread and they produce obstructive jaundice. On rare occasion, the cancer cells from subperitoneal plexus drop into the general peritoneal cavity and they undergo transcerebric migration and produce a secondary deposit, especially on the surface of the ovary. So on the surface of the ovary, they are forming Krukenberg's tumor. This is important. Okay, Krukenberg's tumor. I repeat. So what is Krukenberg's tumor? On rare occasions, the cancer cells from subperitoneal lymph plexus, they drop into the general peritoneal cavity and they undergo transcerebric migration and produce secondary deposit, especially on the surface of the ovary, which is known as the Krukenberg's tumor. Okay, so this is about the lymphatic drainage of the mammary gland from the parenchyma and from the overlying skin of the breast. So we have discussed the arterial supply, venous drainage, nerve supply and lymphatic drainage of the mammary gland. Lymphatic drainage is very, very important. Okay, let us discuss about the clinical anatomy of the breast. So the infiltration of the cancer cells along the suspensory ligaments of the Cooper. So, and if in the cases of fibrosis, you see the retraction of the overlying skin and fixation of the tumor to the underlying pectoral fascia. Okay, that is in case of infiltration of the cancer cells along the suspensory ligaments of the Cooper. So you see fibrosis and you see the retraction of the overlying skin and fibrosis and fixation of the tumor to the underlying pectoral fascia. Now extension of the growth along the lactiferous ducts and the subsequent fibrosis lead to retraction of the nipple, as you can see in this picture. This is extension of the growth along the lactiferous ducts. The growth of the cancer cells along the lactiferous ducts, it leads to fibrosis and eventually it leads to retraction of the nipple. In this picture, the nipple is retracted. Then one condition you have which is known as the Peau d'orange. Peau d'orange, it is a French term. Peau means skin, so skin like orange. You can see here in this diagram. So what is the skin like orange? Peau d'orange is a condition where hair follicle over the lump appear to be retracted and it is caused by the obstruction of cutaneous lymphatics with stagnation of lymph and edema of the skin. So this resembles the skin of orange. So that's why we say the Peau d'orange. So the obstruction of superficial lymphatics by cancer cells, they produce edema of the skin and may spread from one breast to other. So in unilateral cancer breast, the axillary nodes of both sides should be examined for enlargement. Okay, if the patient is suffering with unilateral breast cancer, so he or she needs to be examined both sides for the enlargements. Okay, so secondary deposits on ovaries in cancer make the prognosis worse. Okay, so they may spread from one breast to another. There will be abnormal seeding. The spread through veins communicate with the vertebral venous plexus and spread to vertebrae and also the brain. So this is about the Peau d'orange skin we see. Okay. Let us discuss about prenatal development of the mammary gland or the breast. So it is developed from two sources. It is from the epithelial lining of the ducts and alveoli, which are derived from the surface ectoderm. Okay. Number one, from the epithelial lining of the ducts and alveoli which are derived from the surface ectoderm, and the fibrofatty stroma from the underlying mesoderm. So fibrofatty stroma of the breast is derived from the mesoderm, and the epithelial, the ducts and the alveoli, they are derived from the surface ectoderm. So ducts and alveoli are from the surface ectoderm. Fibrofatty stroma, it is derived from the underlying mesoderm. So usually the milk ridges, they appear in the 7th week of intrauterine life. We see two ectodermal milk ridges appear on each side of the ventral body wall. Okay, there are two milk ridges appear on the ventral surface of the body wall and extends from the axilla up to the inguinal regions. It is being said that they appear in 4th week of intrauterine life, but in some books they say that 7th week of intrauterine life. Okay, so the 7th week of intrauterine life is the authentic one. So you see two milk ridges are the milk lines from axilla to the inguinal region. So in humans, the milk ridges in the pectoral region, that means this region. In humans, the milk lines in the pectoral region, they persist and give rise to development of the breast. Rest of the ridges, they regress, they disappear. Okay, the axillary tail of Spence may represent its cephalic end. Okay, so this you have to remember in case of the development of the breast. In pectoral portion of the ridge, it presents a surface depression which is known as mammary pit. We say the mammary pit in the pectoral region. Okay, so from the bottom of the mammary pit, you see 15 to 20 epithelial cords grow into underlying dermis. Now the epithelial cords, they form rudimentary lactiferous ducts. Okay, they form rudimentary lactiferous ducts. So deeper ends they are ampulated. The cords are canalized by the end of the fetal life. Shortly before birth, the pit is evaginated. The pit is evaginated by the growth of underlying mesoderm and forms the nipple. So the areola becomes apparent during 5th month of fetal life. 5th month of fetal life. So the prenatal development of the breast of both sexes, the mammary lines in humans are visible by the day, we can say at the 37th day. Invagination of mammary pits in the pectoral region is by 49th day. Nipple formation begins at 56th day. Sprouting of the primitive ducts develop at 84th day, and canalization appears during the 150 days. Okay, so at birth, I told you that there is a transient hyperplasia of the duct system and secretion of witch's milk take place by the combined action of fetal prolactin and maternal estrogen. So this is about the development of the breast. So you have to remember that appearance of the milk lines or the milk ridges during 7th week of intrauterine life. Okay, they extend from axilla to the inguinal region. In humans, the milk ridges, they persist in the pectoral region, remaining they disappear. Okay. Let us discuss about congenital anomalies of the mammary gland or the breast. So number one, we have the polythelia. Polythelia are the supernumerary nipples over the breast. So they found irregularly over the breast, and they are not along the milk ridges. Okay, you see that is polythelia, supernumerary nipples. Then we have athelia. Athelia is no nipple over the breast, mainly the accessory breast. Then we have polymastia. Polymastia is accessory breast along the milk ridges. You can see here, this is polymastia. Then amastia, no breast development. Then we have amasia, nipple developed but no breast development. So these are the congenital anomalies of the mammary gland: polythelia, athelia, polymastia, amasia, and amastia and amasia. So dear students, we have come to the end of the lecture of mammary gland. So we started with the clinical anatomical problem. I will repeat again. A 54-year-old female complained to her family physician of hard, painless lump in the upper and outer portion of the right breast. The examination of the breast revealed pudgy orange appearance of the skin, loss of mobility of the breast, and retraction of the nipple. The examination of the axilla revealed enlargement of the axillary lymph nodes. The X-ray of the vertebral column revealed irregular shadow in the vertebral bodies of T6 and T7. She was diagnosed as a case of breast cancer. So the questions which I have asked you: what do you understand of the lump in the breast, and what are its common causes? Mention the anatomical basis of pudgy orange appearance of the skin, retraction of the nipple, and loss of mobility of the breast. And what are the three muscles lying deep to the base of the breast? And what is the venous route of the spread of breast cancer? What is the common site of breast cancer? So the answers: number one, what do you understand of lump in the breast? So what are its common causes? Any abnormal mass or thickening of the breast tissue is called lump. So what is lump? Basically it means abnormal thickening or the mass in the breast tissue is called lump. So lump in the breast may occur due to fibroadenoma. What is fibroadenoma? A benign tumor of the breast, which is usually a firm solitary mass that is mobile beneath the skin. So lump may be due to the breast cancer, that is a malignant tumor of the breast which is adherent to the underlying tissue and it is immobile. This is which is dangerous. So this is the answer for the question: the meaning of the lump in the breast and the common cause for the lump. So common causes are two: one is fibroadenoma, a benign tumor, and the other is breast cancer, a malignant tumor. Then the second question is: what is the anatomical basis of pudgy orange appearance of the skin and retraction of nipple and loss of mobility of the breast? So pudgy orange appearance of the skin, that is skin like orange peel, is due to retraction of the pits of the hair follicles beneath the edematous skin following the retraction of ligaments of Cooper. So this condition is due to blockage of lymphatics draining the skin, leading to stagnation of the lymph and edema of the skin. So retraction of the nipple occurs due to infiltration of the lactiferous ducts by the cancer cells. This is very important. Retraction of the nipple occurs due to infiltration of the lactiferous ducts by cancer cells and the subsequent fibrosis. Then third question we have: what are the three muscles lying deep to the base of the mammary gland? That is, one is pectoralis major, serratus anterior, and aponeurosis of the external oblique muscle of the abdomen. The fourth question is: what is the venous route for spread of cancer? So cancer cells of the breast, they pass through the posterior intercostal veins, then vertebral venous plexus, then they reach the vertebral bodies. This is the venous route of the spread of cancer in case of the malignancy of the breast. Then the last question: what is the common site of the breast cancer? The most common site of the breast cancer is upper and outer quadrant of the breast. where you have the axillary tail of Spence. So with this we have completed the lecture of mammary gland. Mammary gland is very important question from examination point of view, from practical examination point of view, and also from theory examination point of view, and also from clinical point of view. So each and every question is important which is related to the mammary gland. It comes as a long essay, it comes as a short essay, it comes as a very short notes. So I am telling you that you have to be perfect in the mammary gland. Okay, there is no excuse for learning this chapter. Okay, so you have to be perfect. There is no other way that you can ignore this topic. Okay, I am telling you, I am reminding you that this topic is very important. Okay, so go through this topic, read again and again, so that you will understand it better. So there are some, like in blood supply I told you about these some branches above from the axillary artery. So you may not understand that topic because the axillary artery is not, it's a separate topic that will be taught in the next classes. Okay, so there you do not have to worry about the veins which you came to know in this lecture. Those veins also will be discussed in detail, so you will come to know exactly what is what. So for time being I am telling you, you have to memorize the names which are there in the blood supply and the venous drainage. Okay, thank you very much.